Welcome to the latest edition of the Big Pod Machine with Pat Brennan, our star baseball writer, and myself, Gordon Whitmire, and our terrific producer, Sam Greene, filling in for Phil Didion. We are here today, the day after watching Chase Burns make his major league debut and I don't know, Pat, announcing his presence with authority. Is that how we describe the start of that thing?
Yeah, I'd say so. I mean, it was impressive to us in real time, and I know from watching the different baseball shows, the late-night baseball shows when I got home last night, that it made an impression nationally. And how could it not?
How late were you up, dude? Didn't we close down that bar afterwards?
No, we don't have to get into all that.
I mean, I went right to sleep. Holy crap.
Yeah, I know, but I wanted to survey the landscape, and Chase Burns' performance really resonated. And I think that had something to do with the caliber of opponent that he was facing in the New York Yankees. But, I mean, someone described to me the Chase Burns outing as borderline historical. No, I think it was just historical, period. He became the third pitcher in MLB's expansion era since 1961, who on their debut recorded their first 5 outs all via strikeout. One of those...
Did you say the third?
The third, yeah.
I thought he was the first one to do that.
Third. The expansion era stat was third.
Oh. Well, what was the stat on striking out the side in the first?
I think he was the second to do that in Reds history.
Yeah, some guy that pitched in the 90s that we all forgot about.
Yeah. But, you know, strikes out the side in the first inning, 4 batters in the second inning, 3 strikeouts. Jazz Chisholm Jr. got the first hit off Chase Burns.
And then he comes right back and strikes out Volpe on 3 pitches.
Yeah.
99-mile-an-hour fastball, swing and a miss.
He really tortured Trent Grisham all night. 3 strikeouts.
As I found out in the post-game club, I went over to the Yankees. And
he really victimized Trent Grisham, but just top to bottom, you know, you saw everything. He was dominant at times, he faced adversity at times, and showed resiliency and bouncing right back. Short of him getting the decision, the win, which he didn't, because the Reds got him off the hook for that fairly, I thought. This was, because the Reds go on to win the game in 11 innings. I think this was everything you could have asked for from Chase, and for the team to kind of pick him up and lift him up on the night of his debut.
Absolutely, and Pat, you know what this means?
Oh, what's that?
Nothing. It means absolutely nothing. As Terry Francona said before this outing, whatever he does will not define his career. There are some things it suggests about him, though, and if you go to the Enquirer, you can see what Aaron Judge had to say about it. I thought he was pretty insightful.
Very.
Especially what it said about the fact that in a major league debut, when no matter who you are, what position you play, but especially as the starting pitcher, your adrenaline's off the frickin' charts. Yeah. There's just no way around that. So how you control that and command your stuff is paramount. I mean, it's really the one thing. Like, just to be able to throw strikes and to be able to command your pitches is a chore like you'll never face again in your career, and you've probably never faced up to that point in that first inning of your debut. And all he did was strike out the side and locate his pitches. Somehow controlled that. It doesn't mean he didn't have that adrenaline or the butterflies, but he was able to control that. And we saw all the emotion and energy that was spent in handling that moment. We saw it begin to catch up with him as he got somewhere in the middle of the second time through the order. But then again, impressive enough, he went out in the 5th. It's the 3rd time through the order, and he got through it in without any damage at all. And so winds up with 5 innings in his first start against the New York freaking Yankees, the highest scoring team in the American League, the most home runs in the American League, and they're playing in a bandbox.
And I know Terry Francona tried to dissuade reporters on Monday about the idea of Yankees mystique, being a part of this.
Tell it to the players.
Yeah, it's obviously a part of it.
And he knows damn well it is.
Ask Chase Burns how he feels about Yankees mystique after, going into that start. This was... I think... there's also a broader context here, Gordon, of Chase Burns getting the call to start this game after, do you want to touch on Jeimer Candelario?
Well, yeah, but the Burns decision was made before the Candelario decision came down, but all those conversations happened in the same time frame.
Yeah.
This team was playing really well until they went into St. Louis over the weekend. They had won 9 of 12.
Yeah.
And four straight series?
4 straight series, yeah.
And then they lost the first 2 in St. Louis before Andrew Abbott beat them in the Sunday finale. But all this stuff came down right in that time frame. They were playing well enough to have put themselves in the playoff conversation again. I know it's only mid-season. For anybody that hasn't done the math at home, Wednesday is the halfway mark of the Reds season. So they're coming up on the halfway mark, and they're playing well enough that they're in that playoff conversation now. They're in striking distance of what they've talked about since they hired Terry Francona. Now what are we going to do with Wade Miley going on the IL? What are we going to do with Jeimer Candelario, who hasn't produced except for 1 month since he signed that contract at the beginning of right before the 2024 season? And they made the bold moves. They pulled the trigger on Chase Burns, their top prospect, after 13 professional starts.
Yeah.
And they ate $22.5 million of Jeimer Candelario's contract, which, for those who may not know much about the Cincinnati Reds and their business practices, that is one hell of a thing to swallow for them. And the fact that they did it says probably all you need to know if you hadn't already been paying attention to how things have changed since they hired Terry Francona. This team is in it to win it this year. It may not happen. They've got a flawed roster, but they've got real pitching. And Chase Burns, to circle back to your point, suggests that they might even have a little more pitching than we thought a week ago.
Yeah. So this is a jolt for the team. I think you saw that in the performance, top to bottom, fighting back from Carlos Rodon was dealing last night, and the Reds fought back from a 3-0 hole, forced extra innings, had to fight back again when they went down 4-3 in the 11th.
By the way, that might have been the most surprising thing that's happened all season. The most surprising inning of the season may not have been Chase Burns' first inning. It may have been the bottom of the 11th inning, because until then, the Reds were 1-6 in extra inning games. They had played 10 extra innings total. And we all know that in the extra innings nowadays, you get the free runner at second base to start the inning. They had scored that guy once. They had scored one run in 10 of those innings. That's hard to do, man.
It is. This is, and it's real. It feels like it's really set up to play to the advantage of the home team in extra innings.
Well, no doubt, but they've had their share of home extra inning games too, and still haven't done it, including the 10th inning on Tuesday night.
So, and not only that, this was the first time that they scored multiple runs in an extra inning game.
The fact that they'd scored one all year.
Right. Good. I need you here to keep me in line. Yeah, well, never a strong suit of mine. But hey, we're approaching. Today is the midway point of the season. The Reds are 42-38. I know you don't care about the record.
That's 5 out of 6 series won because they got the. By the way, here's another great fact. Hey, our podcast fact of the week. 5 consecutive victories against the Yankees. When they won the series opener, it was the first time they'd beaten the Yankees 4 consecutive times since
the 1976 World Series sweep.
by the big red
And now it's 5
machine.
games. And now it's 5.
And now it's 5.
So I think they may have caught the Yankees at a good time. The AL East, they don't
Yeah,
look like
the
world
Yankees
beaters.
haven't been playing great lately. They're still in first place.
They are an offensive juggernaut, as
Yes.
you alluded to.
Yes.
So this is not to take away from Chase Burns. But look,
And Rodon pitched well.
he did. He absolutely did. We're in the teeth of this tough portion of the schedule that you and I have spoken and written about ad nauseum. How do you feel like it's going? They got the pods.
I mean, they're
this
answering
weekend?
the bell, and I
Yeah.
think these, Nick Kroll, the head of baseball operations, said it. It was to your question the other day when we were talking to him about Jamer Candelario. He said, "This is a statement of intent. Bringing Chase Burns up is a statement of intent.
Yeah.
We're trying to win." I mean, that is probably as concise as you can say where they're at right now. In terms of their approach to what's now going to be the back half of the season. That they're pulling these triggers and making these kinds of bold decisions now. It's a reason to watch. It makes me sit up and take notice.
And I know the Yankees were in town. Their fans always travel well because they are wherever the Yankees go, was part of the reason. But I was reading on social media when I woke up this morning, there were a lot of Reds fans talking about the atmosphere in the ballpark last night. These are smart baseball fans in Cincinnati. This is obviously a baseball town. I think there's an awareness of the fact that things are changing with this Reds team. People spoke last night on social media about the atmosphere in the ballpark. One of our press box colleagues described...
Not a press box wag.
No. But one of our press box colleagues described... He said it felt like a Yankees-Red Sox game at Fenway. My point being, that can be debated. The point being...
Yeah, I don't think it was that.
This is getting interesting, though. The atmosphere was excellent last night.
I did notice this. Compared to Monday night, even. So a lot of Yankees fans there, and we see this at times when the Cubs come in, when the Dodgers are there, every other year when the Toronto Blue Jays come in. You can. The fans from there, they'll either travel or you've got people from there that they're fans, and then it's an odd cheering pattern.
It is
for a home game, and we saw that Monday night again.
Yeah.
We saw it part of Tuesday night again. Aaron Judge hits one to the wall, and then the gasp and the excitement, and then the deflation when it's caught, that kind of stuff. But toward the end of that game, after the Reds tied it in particular, and then it started becoming this tense finish to the game, you heard Reds fans shout down Yankees fans.
Well, I noticed I don't want to use the P word here, the P word being playoffs, in terms of the atmosphere.
Be careful with those P words.
I know. You're telling me. Fans were standing all down the first baseline from the Reds dugout toward the foul pole. And then they started to do it out in left field, too, near the foul pole, getting closer toward the Yankees dugout. There was a little something. Terry Francona shot down the idea of, he didn't want to get into the atmosphere.
He has to do that.
He's locked in on the game. And
that's part of his thing.
Yeah, sure. But, last night was different, and the Yankees are undoubtedly a part of that. But I just get the sense that people realize that maybe there's a spark in this Reds team that's going to be worth paying attention to through the dog days of summer. And, this is going in the right direction now. This is going in the right direction.
And this is, you've said it, I said it, worth watching. Who knows where this goes?
Yeah.
Look, let me just lay this out. They're in fourth place. The Cardinals beat the Cubs again on the same night that we're talking about Chase Burns' debut. They're 2.5 games out. The Brewers are playing really well. All three of those teams above them in the standings have better defenses, which makes whatever they bring to the mound better. You could argue the Cubs definitely have a better lineup. The Brewers probably, maybe you can make the case that the Cardinals do too. So the one advantage that the Reds have is what looks like potentially higher end pitching and deeper. But
the Reds can't win an NL Central series.
But they haven't won. They've won one against the Pirates
in April,
and they've played everybody twice now. I think so. That means that's 8 series, and they've won one.
Yeah, not good.
And so that's not good.
I mean,
you can't win that division without winning games in it. And here's the other thing, that the National League is still really friggin' tough.
Yeah.
So the Reds might have a really strong finish and still might not get there, but they might. I mean, I guess what we're saying is that
stay tuned
to this, and having a manager like Terry Francona, and I've seen it over the years covering other managers, like really good managers, especially early in their tenure with a team that's trying to rebound from something and has some talent. I saw it with Lou Piniella in Chicago. I saw it with Joe Madden later in Chicago. A lot of times what you'll see is, oh, this is the same old crap for 6 weeks or 2 months. And then you start seeing a shift. Sometimes it's personnel moves. Alexis Diaz not being here and Jamer Candelario not being here, that tells you something about the new regime.
Significant, yeah.
So things like that. And then you watch. I'm here to tell you, I don't know what day it's going to happen. There's going to come a day when Francona makes a move in a game that you sit up and take notice and you say, okay, now it starts.
Yeah.
Now he's managing for October.
Yeah.
You can't do that in April. You can't hit the accelerator to the floor in April.
No.
But there's a point when you over the evolution of a season, especially as you're getting to know your personnel, where if it's there to go for it, you turn the knob again.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen, and watch for it. Who knows where it leads? But it's really going to be fun to watch.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. It is. And, getting back to Chase Burns real briefly, an arm like that, for him to do that the week that the Reds are going to honor and celebrate the 50th anniversary of the Big Red Machine, isn't it kind of fun to take some of these players, pick them up out of today's game, these Reds players, and imagine them.
Oh yeah! How ironic that they honor the Big Red Machine with the debut of their top pitching prospect, when all anybody knows about that Big Red Machine is all those hitters.
Yeah, right. But what if? I mean, the Big Red Machine had. How would you describe the pitching?
Well, Don Gullett was the real deal.
Yeah.
The pitching was not the Baltimore Orioles at the time.
Okay, well, that's fair enough.
It was not Hall of Fame pitching, but it was.
I think it was good pitching.
It was good pitching.
Managed well.
Definitely. And we saw, I mean, for people who don't know this, I mean, Sparky Anderson had the nickname Captain Hook because he kept pulling guys out of games after 6 inning starts. He pissed off his entire pitching staff. He got booed by the fans because of how rare that was at the time. They set a major league record for consecutive games without a complete game in 1975. Would you care to guess how many games that was?
I remember. Well, I read your story, so that's kind of cheating. Why don't you share it?
Well, 45.
45, yeah.
45 games in a row. That's nothing. I mean, 12 teams last year didn't have a complete game.
The numbers are going down precipitously.
The only reason the Reds have 2 complete games this year is because they had a rain out. After that rain-shortened game, Nick Lodolo got a second one.
He'll still bring that to the bargaining table when his next contract
No
is
question.
up.
No question. That's a workhorse right there, boy. But so the way they managed it, you could say, well, was he ahead of his time? No. Necessity is the mother of invention, right? I mean, he had to do that with that team. Yeah. And Johnny Bench says, he had one basic hard rule when it came to his pitching staff. If his starter pitched well, he wasn't going to let him lose the game.
Yeah.
So if the guy was starting to fade, and Bench was a big part of that, I wrote a story talking to Johnny about how he was essentially Captain Hook and the guys on
Yeah.
that team backed that up. That he was making a lot of those pitching changes by telling Sparky when to go to the bullpen, and furthermore, telling him who to bring in. And most of the time, it was Pedro Bourbon.
Yeah,
Because that guy would pitch every friggin' day.
Yeah.
But you saw something happen in 1975 because they had to. Now it's just like commonplace.
Yeah.
And you get booed if you leave the guy in too long now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So
Like Terry Francona said, letting a guy throw 100 pitches now seems like it can trigger an investigation. It
Yeah,
seems like
exactly.
it's a controversy when a guy throws 100 pitches.
Yes.
But we are honoring. Well, the Reds are honoring.
Yeah.
The Big Red Machine, and you have poured a half season's worth, of work into retelling, and in some cases telling for the first time stories of the Big Red Machine. So this is a culmination of a long project for you this week. How has that been for you, and how have you experienced revisiting this team?
Well, I appreciate you bringing that up. I poured a lot of myself into it,
Yeah.
but mostly because it's been kind of a passion project for me, as well as a project for the paper. When I was a kid, I watched those teams. And I grew up in a different part of the country, and I watched those teams. Back when there weren't a whole lot of games on TV yet, but you always had the Saturday morning game, and especially anytime the Reds were playing the Dodgers, you would typically get that game nationally, and the names were magical. We were talking about this before we went on to the podcast. When you mention Johnny Bench and Pete Rose to a certain generation, or back then in their prime, they had the popular cultural resonance of like Willie Mays, Mickey Mantle, Joe Namath, where they transcended the sport they played, where a person on the street who may not be a sports fan may not even know what sport those guys play, have heard the name. And so, I mean, that's in some ways that's bigger than baseball, right? And they had so many just all-time guys on that team that created this all-time thing that's really only come along a couple of times in baseball in terms of a cultural relevance, a mystique that creates a lasting legacy. In fact, that's what we called our series of stories, the legacy of the Big Red Machine and how and why it still resonates to this day. It's Johnny Bench changed the position. And I've got an entire story on that if anybody cares to go back and look at it. But I've talked to a lot of catchers that came along after him that describe how, and then his thought process and why he went about doing things the way he did. And then there's the Johnny Bench Captain Hook story, which really talks a lot about how Sparky managed the team. Yeah. And one of my favorite stories was like was when the Big Red Machine became the Big Red Machine, because the first mention of it was by an L.A. writer in 1969. But that's not the team that we know as the Big Red Machine. And there were all kinds of moments that came since then. Probably the most popular theory that when they got Joe Morgan, that was, it was 3 years later, that was the start of the Big Red Machine. Well, yeah, kind of, but maybe not really. And that was a fun story to do, talking to everybody about that, because everybody's got real strong opinions. I'm talking about the people that were there. Yeah. Have real strong opinions on that. And so that was a fun story to do if anybody wants to go back and look at that. But it's been really fun going down this road and discovering some things that I didn't know about a team I thought I knew a lot about. Yeah, right. So there's going to be things all weekend long. Yeah. There's a big event Thursday night. What theater is that?
The Aronoff Theater.
Aronoff Theater. And
we're going to be all gas, no brakes, covering
that's right.
this stuff.
That's right.
All the way through the weekend.
Yeah. So
it's a special time. I mean,
not Skyline chili gas.
Oh, why'd you have to go there? You're always taking a dig at Skyline.
hey, man, until they sponsor us, that's going to be the case.
We'd welcome that sponsorship. But
we love you, Skyline.
Yeah, we did. No, I do. He clearly doesn't. Yeah, it's going to be a loaded weekend of festivities, and just thinking about the age of these guys and where they're at.
Yeah.
I mean, we're already, not to get too somber, but we're already. This is the time of goodbyes for the Big Red Machine.
I mean, look at just the last year to 15 months.
And so maybe we're not in that time of goodbyes quite yet, although we've lost Pete.
Lost Joe a few years back.
Yeah.
Don Gullett last year. Bill Plummer last year.
So maybe it is that time. And, in terms of the increments of years as time passes that you go back and celebrate accomplishments, 10 years from now, the personnel probably looks a lot different that would be available to do something like this, and this is just, it feels like maybe the last big celebration of the Big Reds.
Well, you're really going down to a dark place here, aren't you?
I'm not. I'm saying this is a special thing, and people should savor it for that reason.
I do agree with that. Absolutely. And you know who else said that?
Who really?
Johnny Bench said that.
Oh, wow.
He said that it wasn't too long ago they talked about, he stays in touch with these guys.
Yeah.
And he was a big part, by the way, of making sure that there's 23 out of 26 living members of those two teams that are going to be here. And one of them who's not is Davey Concepcion, by the way, who has been in a hospital recovering from lung transplant surgery and some complications. But last I heard, he might be turning a corner. And so maybe there's some positive things there. But almost everybody's going to be here. And Johnny Bench has been a big part of that. So he said that it wasn't that long ago that they were talking and saying, we really need to get together because we might not all be here for much longer.
Yeah.
And so, they're well aware of that.
Yeah.
And it's crazy to think that we get all these years later, and I mean, they're still big. The Big Red Machine is still big.
You walk around Great American Ballpark on a game night, I guarantee you're going to count more Pete Rose, more Johnny Bench jerseys. Ellie De La Cruz is probably giving those guys a run for their money now.
The occasional Morgan and Perez, too.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean,
I sometimes see Concepcion.
Absolutely. The team is so beloved, and it's a love affair that's lasted for 50 years now.
Yeah.
And in some ways, these guys are as present in the minds of the people of Cincinnati and this fan base as are the current players.
Foster still lives here. I mean, as an example.
Yeah.
Tony Perez said that his wife still gives him grief for not invoking his no trade rights when they traded him to Montreal after the '76 championship because she loved being here. Eduardo says he remembers, that's Tony's kid who played in the big leagues for a long time, said he remembers exactly where he was when that trade went down because his life turned upside down and he went to school here with his brother. They had all his best friends were the kids of the players on that team, and he was a Cincinnati kid in his mind, and Cincinnati was their home. So that's part of the story. That's part of the legacy, and yet they. In baseball history, I mean, they're as big as anything that's ever come along as well. So,
well said.
We should probably wrap it there because we got to go do some more putting the gas to the pedal. Or what did you say about
all gas, no brakes?
All gas, no brakes. And as you pointed out,
I thought you would appreciate that because I'm of
it
the
just
generation
made me
of
think
electric
of Skyline.
cars where there's no internal combustion engine. That's your generation.
Right. Yeah.
The Model T rolling off the
I actually
assembly
know
line.
how to rebuild a carburetor, and now they don't even friggin' have carburetors anymore. I'm telling you, man.
Times change.
The world's gone to hell in a handbasket, man. All right, with that, as our throwback 1970s old man yelling at clouds here, we'll call it a wrap on this edition of the Big Pod Machine.
To our our producer making a cameo, Sam Greene.
Sam Greene, the great Sam Greene. You see him on the website and in the paper all the time. Star photographer and even a better
multimedia,
better
dude.
podcast producer.
Better
I was
dude.
going to say podcast producer.
Oh, okay. I was going to say better Hall of Fame roommate.
Oh yeah,
in spring
right.
training.
Hall of Fame spring training
Yeah.
roommate. Absolutely.
I don't know if he would say the same about you and me.
Well, I'm not. We don't have time.
Okay.
All right. Well, with that, till next time, for Pat, for Sam, I'm Gordon, and we'll be right here next week.